I used to have gout. The attacks came just about every month, and they were simply awful. Now, I haven't had an attack for more than 2 years. I don't think I'll ever have another one ever again. At their worst, those attacks were disabling. I couldn't move. I couldn't go to work. I was literally unable to get up because even the slightest movement of the affected area was beyond unbearable. I couldn't sleep properly with bedclothes, which in cooler weather meant turning the heating up in the house. Not comfortable for my wife, not good for our energy bills. The causes of gout, and the real causes of gout. After my first encounter with gout, my doctor gave me the standard explanation of its causes. He said that gout was caused by excess uric acid in the blood. Uric acid is a byproduct of the processing of certain foods. The uric acid comes from the liver as a waste product. It's sent to the kidneys from where it is supposed to be removed from the body. I had gout because, in a nutshell, gout is what you get when your body isn't expelling all its uric acid. The excess uric acid forms tiny spike-shaped crystals. Those crystals get into your bloodstream. From there, they find their way into your joints. And from time to time, the immune system attacks them. And when the immune system does that, the inflammation that results is experienced as a gout attack, also known as excruciating, awful pain. If you suffer from gout, then I truly feel for you. I know what you're going through. It's been just over 2 years now since my final gout attack, but I still remember what it felt like. Anyway, that was the doctor's explanation of gout. So far, so simple. Gout only gets worse. Over the first year or so, my gout attacks went from one attack every 1 or 2 months to monthly, and then occasionally to every few weeks. I started with the standard meds, anti-inflammatories, steroid jabs, drugs to reduce the uric acid in my blood. Really, despite his best intentions, I think my doctor was simply trying things out. Treatments are offered as much in hope as in the expectation they'll do anything. But even when a drug did do some good, I knew I was just managing the condition. And I realized that for many gout sufferers, this was the case. They could swallow any number of pills, inject as much steroid as their bodies could handle, and avoid every suspect piece of food and drink. The underlying problem, the actual cause of the gout, was still there, creating all sorts of problems for the body to deal with. I followed the typical do's and don'ts. It's typical stuff. Exercise more, lose weight, eat a balanced diet, whatever that is. Eat less red meat. Don't smoke. I never have. Go a couple days a week without alcohol. And it made precisely no difference to my gout at all. Although, to be honest, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have bothered with any of that. Asking the awkward questions. My natural curiosity prompted me to ask questions about this disease. If uric acid leads to gout, then why did I suddenly have too much uric acid in my blood? Well, it makes sense that either A, I was suddenly producing too much of it, or B, that my body simply was no longer removing it effectively. And it turns out that the answer is B. In fact, for 90% of gout sufferers, scientists say that it isn't overproduction of uric acid that is the problem. It's the underprocessing of it. In other words, something's going wrong with the body's ability to expel uric acid properly. So I was quite puzzled. Here's how I thought about it. There was a time when I hadn't even heard of gout, much less suffered from it. Then I had gout for just over 3 years. And then 2 years ago, I experienced my last ever gout attack and never suffered another one. So, for a number of decades of my life, my body handled the uric acid effectively. Suddenly, it could no longer handle that acid properly, and so I found myself with gout. Fast forward after 3 years of gout, and once again, everything is fine. I'm gout-free. It doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to work this out. Remember, it's not that I'm producing too much uric acid that's the problem. It's that I'm no longer removing enough of it from my body. So at first, something in my body was working. It was getting rid of the uric acid. Then it stopped working, so I got gout. Then it started working again. The pain disappeared. There was no more flare-ups, and I was completely healthy once more. But there it is. I had gout because something had stopped working. And it's that something that had stopped working that most of our doctors are failing to address. If we find out what it is that stopped working and then started working again, then we found the key to ending gout forever. what I now know but didn't know then. I haven't had even a whisper of gout now for over 2 years. And this is because, unlike most sufferers, I found a practitioner who tackled my gout from where it started, as opposed to just handling the symptoms. Once she'd done that, the problem of my body not processing uric acid properly was over. Bye-bye gout! I'm going to tell you about her approach now. But first, just be sure about this, because if you suffer gout, this probably is your experience too. Once my doctor decided I had gout, he followed a pretty standard pattern of advice, medications, and treatments. Doctors all over America typically focus on 3 different approaches to the gout problem. First, since uric acid is the byproduct of the food we eat, they look at dietary restrictions on food, mostly on red meat and alcohol. The thinking is that if less uric acid is being produced in the first place, there's less for the body to deal with. That sounds a lot more sensible than it actually is. Second, gout patients try drugs that tackle the uric acid that's already made it to the bloodstream. The aim here is to help the body do its job of dissolving this excess. That meets with unpredictable results. But worse, it's dealing with the excess uric acid, not the reason why there's excess uric acid. Finally, other drugs are offered to tackle the pain and inflammation of gout as it arises. Again, this deals with what is happening, but not why it's happening. Still, on the surface, all this is perfectly understandable, but there's a serious problem here. Because for as long as the emphasis is on tackling gout at the point where the disease is already in some way in motion, we're simply not addressing what set it in motion in the first place. We feel like we're doing something useful, but we're tinkering at the edges of the problem, which is why gout can and often does go on for years and years, yet it doesn't have to. Gout has dangerous risk factors. Things get a tiny bit worse. During that first visit, my doctor told me 2 other things, and I didn't like either of them. First, he pointed out that each gout attack makes another attack more likely. Once you've had a few attacks, that's about it. Get ready for gout as a regular thing. Some people that have had attacks of gout over a longer period can end up developing a more chronic or persistent form of gout. It's called chronic tophaceous gout,